Shereen Bhan is a managing editor of CNBC-TV18. She's not just synonymous with the channel, she spent 24 years of her 25-year journalism career there and is very much the face of the channel, the brand. It's Shereen.
I said, for me, really my biggest learning.
On Say Again, with me, Amrita Tripathi, Shereen talks about that incredible 25-year career, why she doesn't take accolades and awards all that seriously, and what kindness has to do with leadership. Let's dive in. Hello there, Shereen Bhan. I'm not nervous at all. So, Shereen, you have so many awards and accolades. Of course, you're managing editor CNBC TV18. I was looking at some of the, titles you've picked up along the years. Best Business Anchor. You've been FICCI Woman of the Year. You've been the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader. Do you ever get this feeling like, hey, cool, I can chill for a bit? I have a feeling not.
Amrita, I don't take any of this stuff seriously. Not to say that it doesn't matter or it is not appreciated or it's not valued, but I'm a little detached from all of this, because I think if there is one lesson that I've learned through my own experience, as well as watching people around me, is that if you start to get very closely involved with tags and labels and awards and recognition and fame and the glory, you can end up being in a situation where you trap yourself into this kind of bubble where suddenly if something turns or if something gives away, you could end up seeing a sort of house of cards kind of collapse happen. So I've always tried to distance myself from labels, from the awards, etc. I value them as a recognition of the work that I do, but I don't link that to my identity. I don't link that to my self-worth. And I certainly don't believe in the fact that I'm the best anchor or I'm, so on and so forth, because I just think that ends up putting you in a situation where you stop listening to other people, where you stop seeing what is happening around you and you start living inside yourself. So in a way, living inside yourself is good, but sometimes too much of that can also be, I believe, not a particularly great thing to happen.
And you're someone who's, like you said, you've had it's more than 2 decades now. Is it 25 years as a journalist?
24. Yes, 25 years as a journalist, 24 years at CNBC.
That's incredible. So I'm also, it blows me away, because we've seen so much attrition, right? From the sort of CEOs of companies you interview to the media. Do you have any thoughts or reflections on how you've had such a long stint? Like, what is the secret sauce? Also to you, staying top of your game, because you're still deeply passionate about the news. You're still somebody who chases every story. What's the secret sauce?
There's no secret sauce. I'm deeply passionate about what I do 24 years on, because I don't know any other way of operating. And I truly believe that if you're doing something, you're taking something up, then you're either in it or don't do it. That's always been my philosophy. You have to bring 100% of yourself to the task, to the job, to whatever role and responsibility you take on. So that's just been the approach that I've always had. But on this business of attrition and staying in one place for 24 years, I've always believed that you have to have a sense of ownership, and you have to deeply believe in the brand that you're working with, or the story that you're trying to tell, or what you're creating. And for me, CNBC TV18 has pretty much been like a startup, and something that I've seen change and evolve and grow over the last 2 decades, and I've been part of that change. And it's so our evolution, if I could say, has sort of has happened simultaneously, has happened parallelly. And what are the reasons for people to leave? Either you're unhappy with what you're doing, or you believe that you've been treated unfairly, or that you believe that you should be getting paid better, and so on and so forth. For me, my priority has always been, do I enjoy the work that I do, and I enjoy the people that I do the work with, and that has always driven my decisions, and that continues to be true at CNBC TV18 for me till today. I mean, I love coming into work and I love working with the people that I work with. And so, this business of should I look out for the sake of looking out? No, it's just never been interesting to me. And I also believe that after having spent so much of my time and my youth pretty much here, if I have to take the plunge, I would want to do something completely different. I don't want to do the same thing all over again. What's the fun in that? What's the joy in that? I have helped create a brand that I'm very, very proud of. And so if I were to take on another journey, it would be to try and create something different, something new, something fresh. So which is why, I've stayed on, and I continue to enjoy the work that I do.
Yeah, and the brand is so synonymous with you, though, Shereen. I have to say, from the other side, when I was working at a tech company and we'd be working on these amazing content partnerships, almost every single brand representative our teams would talk to for something to do with CNBC or Network 18 more broadly would be like, "We want Shereen to do the show," and I was like, "Get in line."
The furniture.
No, it's so incredible. You're right, and I think I love the way you said you think of it as a startup, because you were there from pretty much the get-go, as the brand, as CNBC has grown over the years as well. You've seen your teams grow. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Young Turks, because I saw that fab tweet you did. I cannot believe that it's been 22 years of Young Turks. So for those of you who have not seen this show, way before startups were on point and on trend, this was a show where Shereen would go and interview entrepreneurs, business, heads of business, and essentially capture their mission, their vision. And that's some staying power there as well, Shereen. What are some of the things that you think have changed in that business landscape, in the way we look at startups now, and in your own journey with Young Turks?
I think one of the most fulfilling journeys that I've had at CNBC TV18 has really been the Young Turks journey, because it was a bet that we made. It was an investment that we made. It was a chance that we took 22 years ago when it wasn't the cool thing to do. Nobody was interested in startups. No one was promoting startups. No one was talking about startups. And it really, the birth of Young Turks was on account of us saying that, look, we have a 24/7 beast that we need to feed on an hourly basis. We can't keep talking to the same set of people. We have to find new energy. We have to find new faces. We have to find new stories to tell. And there have to be, there has to be people around that we haven't focused on that would be interesting to talk to. And that was really the idea, that let's look for first generation entrepreneurs. And we started, and it took on a life of its own. And I really did, I think it was meant to be. And I just think that I put my passion and my heart and soul into it. And over the years, we've had so many people, we've had great teams work on the show, and everyone really sort of, made this their sort of pride and joy, and put their heart, soul, sweat, tears, everything into making it what it is today. So, huge thank you to the teams that have worked on the show over the past 22 years. And it also, as I said, sometimes an idea is somewhat ahead of the curve, but in our case, we were ahead of the curve, but we were also fortunate and lucky that the economy changed. And, we did start to see the internet boom translating into a crop of new companies being created, and, first generation entrepreneurs taking the risk, taking the plunge to create new companies, to create new institutions. And so it's been a very happy convergence of our aspiration of wanting to create a community of entrepreneurs, and the opening up of India's economy, where we've seen this birth of entrepreneurial energy. And so it's really been fascinating to watch that. And, to talk about the change, I think, Amrita, when we started, it was, and it's natural, right? I mean, it was an ecosystem that was just about being built. It was starting to be built, and people were obviously looking at, okay, what's happening in the US? What are the ideas that are working there? What are the kind of companies that are being created there? And creating an Indian version of those companies or those ideas or those brands. But what I've seen over the last say 10-15 years is that there is now a lot of breadth and depth in the Indian startup ecosystem. There is, of course, a significant amount of more money as well, but you also have Indian companies now doing interesting things in space tech, for instance. I mean, I think that is such an exciting area, and a couple of years ago we wouldn't have thought that we would have seen the first private rocket launch happening here in India, and talking about taking on Elon Musk and so on and so forth. So I think there has been a plethora of ideas that address India's challenges. And when I say India's challenges, they also then become relevant to the world, because we have complex challenges anyway. And if you can solve for that, then you can solve for anything outside as well. And the global aspiration, that's been really interesting. I mean, we were just in the Valley, and we've been doing this Valley trek for 10 years now. And so many Indian origin entrepreneurs who've actually moved from India, set up companies in the US, because they are addressing a global market. And whether it's SaaS or now AI, just doing cutting edge stuff. So that has been the big change. I think, as I keep saying, it's the audacity of ambition, the audacity of aspiration that I've just seen so dramatically. And that's really wonderful to see.
Yeah, and I think our attitudes towards it, absolutely. The audacity of ambition. I saw one of the clips of your interview with John Chambers. I thought it was actually gave me the idea, because he flipped the script on you. He was interviewing, and I was like, let me follow up on that. You did say this, and I think it's interesting because you see so many people now in India who want to build in India for the world. It's not just this earlier. We had a bit of a
now you're, as I said, in the Valley, we spoke to so many companies that are now building from the US with significant operations here in India for the world. So, it's not just make in India for the world, but it's make globally for the world with an Indian, soul and an Indian heart and Indian roots. So I think that's also very interesting. And I think people have realized that, look, if you want to address the US market, you want to address markets that are large, and you will need to focus, and you will need to have significant sales teams outside of India. And of course, R&D continues to be a significant part of a company's plan and operations here in India. But I think that realization that, look, you need to be where the customer is also something that I've seen change over the years, with companies saying, okay, 1 foot here, 1 foot there, but that's the market that we're going to chase after.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you something, Shereen. I don't even know if you'd be able to guess at how many people you've interviewed at this stage, 25 years in. Thousands, obviously, but do you have any sense of the number?
Well, on Young Turks, it's certainly a couple of thousand people that we've been able to sort of reach out to over the last 22 years. I mean, on CNBC, I don't know why. In a day, sometimes you could be doing, like, just on counting day, I think we have at least 100 plus guests through that day. So, I'm not keeping score, Amrita. I'm not keeping score.
Okay, well, so of the tens of thousands of people you made, not a tough question, I promise you. I want to ask you a couple of questions based on the people you've interviewed, based on the range of people as well. Because the other fascinating thing is, I think it feels like you also keep challenging yourself. You don't just keep doing the same, same old kind of journalism in a way, right? Because you have to keep reinventing yourself as a journalist. You have to keep things interesting for yourself. So you've interviewed, I was just, this is not at all exhaustive, but you've interviewed Nobel laureates, prime ministers, foreign leaders, of course, India Inc., the who's who at Davos every year, I think, for decades. So many change makers, right? And I think, the initiative you have right now, Future Female Forward, also is really fascinating to see, because you're constantly passing the mic and trying to share, other people's stories. I want to ask you two stories about this, two questions about this. What are some of these stories that really stay with you so many years on? What keeps it fresh? And who are your favorite people to interview?
I mean, favorite people to interview, gosh, it's and I'm also starting to lose my memory now. So, but over the years, there's been just so many organic conversations that have happened, which have taken me by surprise. There have been conversations that I thought would have been sort of the conversations that would be the most memorable, that haven't turned out to be like that. So I think it's. I mean, I have to say, people like Benazir Bhutto, and it's also when these conversations have happened, at what point in your career these conversations happened. I was, very young, just at the start of my career, when I got the opportunity to interview someone like her, and it was just such a, it was an experience that I will always remember, because she was articulate, she was a woman, in exile at that point in time, but the way that she spoke the self-assured, way that she carried herself. I mean, and the honest, I mean, of course, at the end of the interview, she broke down and all of that. But I think that it will stay with me, the kind of impression that she made. Also, as I pointed out, I mean, I was so young at that point in time when that happened. People like Richard Branson, people like Warren Buffett, people like N.R. Narayanamurthy, Sudha Murthy. I mean, there have just been so many people who I've had the opportunity to engage with, Bill Gates and uh, Ratan Tata, and it's just, I mean, for me, I try and take away hopefully something from each of those conversations, each of those interactions, and my hope is that they take away something from that. I mean, they go away with a memory of, oh, I enjoyed that engagement, or I enjoyed that conversation, or it wasn't a bore, or it wasn't a chore to have gone through this interview. But yeah, over the years, just so many conversations, organic, that have sort of sparkled, that have taken on a completely unexpected, path and route. But yeah, hard to remember. Hard to remember.
Well,
Yeah,
who can blame you? Thousands and thousands of interviews later. But that's what I love about journalism, though, right? Like, you're learning something every day, practically, with every conversation. And I love that you don't get bored of it. That's something I'm going to come back to. We're going to take a short break, but much more with Shereen Bhan when we come back. Okay, we're back with Shereen Bhan, and I was just talking to you, Shereen, about the kind of people you've been interviewing. I do want to ask you a little bit, because leadership is really front and center for me these days. Thinking about what makes a good leader. We're in this age of ascendant AI. There's a theory that human-centric leadership is going to be very, very critical. What are some of the qualities and attributes you think make a good leader, and how do you try to sort of implement that in your day-to-day life?
Amrita, for me, and especially I think now when we talk about technology being the sort of bedrock of everything that we do and so on and so forth, I think human centric leadership is going to be critical. And I think the decisions that leaders take as individuals with a heart and soul and a conscience and empathy will be extremely important and extremely relevant as we move forward, because we don't know what we're getting into. We don't know what the boundaries are going to be. We don't know what the guardrails will be. We are in many ways entering uncharted territory, and I think that's the case that everyone is grappling with at this point in time, whether it's the government or regulators or corporations. And at the end of the day, as individuals, what is any of this going to mean for us? But for me, leadership to start with, and this is something that I've learned over the years, and through my own experiences, and learning from people that I've interacted with. To start with, it really is about having the courage of your conviction. I think a leader needs to stand up for what they believe in, stand up for what they want, stand up for the vision that they have, and have the ability to articulate that very clearly, communicate that very clearly and consistently and fairly and transparently, so that you can get people to go along with you. I'm a firm believer in the fact that, if you're a strong leader, it means nothing if you don't have the ability to take people along with you. Because then what are you doing? You're pretty much walking by yourself. You're pretty much walking solo. And I think leaders who walk solo don't really get the job done. And I think for me personally, my biggest what gives me my kick, or what gives me my high, is to see that this is the vision that I laid out, and I've had people buy into that because I have spoken to them about it, because I have been able to communicate to them what this means for them, what this means for the brand, what it means for the organization, and then see that collective work towards making that happen. That's when the magic happens. And to see people embody that, to see people live that on a daily basis, that's when the magic happens. And I'm a firm believer in, I'm not a believer in hierarchical structures. And I was watching this interview that Jensen Huang of NVIDIA just did, and he's sort of breaking down this whole notion that we have of organizational structures where it's all hierarchical and so on and so forth. And I've never believed in that. I do believe in having much flatter organizations, because I believe that really gives you the ability to pick up from different places, to co-create, to ideate, and it has a different energy. I'm not suggesting for a moment that, look, there is no one in control. You have to have someone take responsibility, and you have to have people being accountable. But that doesn't mean command and control, to my mind. That means collaborate and work together. So that's been my leadership style. That's been my leadership philosophy. And I think, again, this probably goes back to the way that I was brought up, because I grew up in an environment where I watched my father go out on an Air Force base and fly a fighter jet every day, where duty and responsibility drove every decision, right? I mean, you couldn't be having a bad day. You needed to show up at work. And so if I'm having a bad day, I show up, but I'm mindful of the fact that I will give a colleague or a peer my time and my shoulder if they're having a bad day. So I'm not suggesting that you create this culture where you can't talk about having a bad day, or you're not there for each other. I think we need to create a culture that allows people to bring their true selves, their authentic selves, with all their warts and everything, to the table. But I do believe that, for me as a leader, I need to show up for the people that I work with, for the organization that I work for. And there are days when I don't feel like, I'm up to it, but I will still persevere, because I feel like I'm responsible for a larger group of people. So I think I do sometimes tend to pressure myself, because I feel like I owe the organization and my team, and I think that I've now learned to balance that a little bit. But that really has been a learning, and also something that I have sort of grappled with over the years. How much is too much? And I think that is something that I've learned to deal with. But leaders have to have heart. Leaders have to have empathy. And this notion or this idea that you have to be tough and authoritative. For me, being gentle, is the biggest strength. I don't believe in this very masculine kind of idea or notion that we've been fed of leadership. I think the femininity has so much strength, and why should we as women have to adopt masculine attributes just to be able to position ourselves as leaders? I think there's great strength in gentleness, and I'm all for that. And that's just me at my core.
And you still hit your goals and your targets, and there's nothing that stops you from doing. Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? I mean, the outcome that matters. And if you're doing it in a way that people around you are happy, or doing it in a way that people feel supported, and people feel uplifted, and people feel inspired, and people want to come into work every day, then you've done what you're supposed to do.
Win-win. So, we've actually, for those of you listening, we were colleagues back in the day. Shereen and I should have started with this. I was at Network 18 for almost a decade. And, apart from sort of being in your orbit and seeing you operate, I'm going to share an example that hopefully doesn't embarrass you, but I think really speaks to what you're saying. I was a young, super green anchor. And I came into the green room once, and I was having a meltdown because my boss, who shall not be named, in his direct messaging impulses, was literally like, "This is terrible. You're just looking terrible on air. There's something about the wardrobe and all of this we're not going to get into." But basically, I was having a full-fledged meltdown. And I remember the next day I came and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. Because, again, I think what's fascinating to me about a newsroom is, unlike all of these corporates I've spoken to or talked or you worked with even now, there's no concept really of mentorship, right? No one's there to hold your hand and say, you kind of is sink or swim. The next day I came in, and Anita ji, bless her, who was the heart and soul of the green room, was like, "Come here, I have to show you something." And she had 20 blazers for me or something. And I was like, "Where have these come from?" And she's like, Shereen ma'am was there. Shereen ma'am heard everything. And she said, "Just give her these." And I cannot tell you, Shereen, what that meant. And, now sitting at 43, it sounds like such a small thing, but it meant the world to me that, you didn't make me feel embarrassed. You didn't get in on the sort of, emotional train there. You saw something happening. You're like, "I can fix this." And you did it. And I wasn't even on your team. And I just remember this as one of those moments where I was like, she's such a kind human being. She's so empathetic. And it just makes you feel like, there's a human in there. And for all of us, right? There's always something we can do for someone else. So anyway, sorry for embarrassing you here, but big hugs across the
Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, now I remember, but yeah, I forgotten about that. But I mean, we are human beings at the end of the day, and I keep telling people that just because you see us on TV, and just because we have the ability to talk to people on television, and we have a microphone, and we get on television night after night, it doesn't make us special. That doesn't make us special. What makes us special is who we are as people, what we do, and how we make other people feel. I mean, that's which is what it goes back to the first question that you asked me, Amrita. Why don't I take any of these awards and all of that seriously? Because when it's all done and dusted, the awards are a nice thing to have. But if I'm not going to have my family and my friends and people I care about, there with me, celebrating my success or holding my hand through the really dark days, what's the point of the awards and the rest of it?
And that's something you learn, right? With, I mean, through experience, also through life, as we go through. I think we're friends, Shereen, in the sense that those of you listening, like when you have a really cool friend who's like super impressive and
I don't know about
inspirational.
cool. I don't know about cool. I would not
Very
consider
cool.
myself cool.
Very cool. And hopefully, we can continue this conversation a little bit. I want to ask you about something else I noticed of late. It's also because I've not really been very active on some of the social media, like Instagram. But and I'm going to bring this back to, again, another overlap we had. We both studied philosophy at college.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dr. Tanka and Mr. Nanda, Dr. Shankaran. We didn't overlap there, but I got to know this several years later. And I don't know why this struck me when I saw some of your Instagram captions. Like, I've seen such beautiful quotes that I would never have guessed for if I didn't know you, or even with knowing you, actually. I think I saw Rumi. Who else did I see recently? I saw Camus.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this other side. There's poetry, there's quotes, there's prose. There's always something more profound than you'd expect on an Instagram caption. Tell us that side of Shereen.
No, I'm not trying to be profound. To start with, I mean, I'm not a social media person at all. In fact, I've been very hesitant to engage on social media. It's been like a lot of my producers browbeating me to say, look, you have to, in this age, you have to be on social media. You have to have some social media presence. So I finally gave in a couple of years ago. And I don't do a lot, but I think, again, I'm not trying to be somebody that I'm not. So I think that's what you see of me on Instagram or Twitter. Twitter is completely work and news, and I'm a little bit more sort of, I would say, cooler on Instagram, because it's really an extension of the other side of me. But it's and I put out what I enjoy. I put out what I would, what makes me think. I put out what moves me. If there's a piece of poetry that moves me, I think, okay, let me share it. I don't know, it might move somebody else or not. But that's at that moment. It made me feel something, and I'm like, okay, I would like to share this. So that's really what that's about. There, it's not strategic. I'm not, I don't have a plan. I'm not thinking it through or anything. It really is in the moment, where I see something or I read something and I feel a certain way, and sometimes the universe of algorithms has a way of sort of making it all come together. But you suddenly see this piece of poetry that resonates with exactly how I'm feeling at that point in time, and I'm like, okay, this is great. But yeah, so I think, again, and it also has to do, Amrita, with uh, as we get older. And in my case, I think, like, turning 40 was a, was like a switch in many ways. I think before that I was still far too encumbered by public scrutiny. What are people going to think? What are people going to say? And so I was holding myself back in many ways, because I was like, okay, I don't want to put out anything personal. Let my work speak for itself, and so on and so forth. As I have, over the last few years specifically, I think I'm less and less concerned about what somebody else has to say, or about me or not say about me, or how they view me or how they judge me. And I think the big realization there is that, look, we're too small in this in the scheme of things. We overthink. We give ourselves too much importance. I mean, nobody is going to spend 5 minutes of their day thinking about what I may have said or done or what I look like. And even if they do, it's going to be, it'll last for 30 seconds, and then they'll move on. So how does it matter? I think this fear, and especially for women, this fear that we have because of the way that the environment has been, of being scrutinized, of being judged, of being evaluated for everything that we say or do or wear, or how we speak and how we look. I think that has, in many ways, it creates this sort of self-limiting impact. And I think for me, it really has been about just letting some of that go, just learning to let go, just learning to breathe, learning to be, myself, owning, myself, and reclaiming some of my
Yeah,
self
yeah.
as well.
I love
So
that. Am I bummed that it was not on Twitter when I was at Twitter? Yes, a little bit, I will say. But I can feel you, like, just exhaling, like in some of these. I saw the other thing that was fascinating to me. I didn't realize, like, your yoga is like another level. Like, tell me a little bit about this. Like, and I don't know if we'll check with you if we can use some of your stills, for the video of this. But it's amazing. So you've done aerial yoga, which was the
yeah,
first time I was like, what is she doing? But it looks
yeah.
very safe and it looks very acrobatic. And then you have like these yoga videos now. How important has yoga been to your journey? And
No, as I keep joking with people, we're pretty much in a circus. So I'm actually practicing to be part of the real circus. That's my plan B. But no, yoga for me has been life altering, has been life changing in many many ways. And I was just not the sort of person who was into any kind. I've not been a sports person while I was in school or college. It was just not part of who I was. And so for me to have discovered this fairly late in life, and taken to it, it has been very very special. And it happened completely by chance. A former colleague of ours, and this is before COVID, and she came. She was chatting in the newsroom, and she said, "Oh, I have this pass for this yoga class, and I don't think I can go." And I don't know what happened. I don't know why I sort of said, "Okay, give it to me. I'll go." And I said, okay, let me go give it a shot. And I went, and I kind of just fell in love with it. I think, again, it was the universe's way of presenting something that I believe I needed at that point in time. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that things and people happen to you when they need to happen to you, when you want them to happen to you. And I think I needed that. And it's given me not just the physical sort of strength and the physical ability, and I've discovered a new side of me that I didn't think existed, or I didn't think that I could do some of the stuff that I do today. So it's been life altering in that way. But I think it's emotionally, it's helped me center. It's helped me be much more self-aware. It's also helped me see things in perspective. Sometimes you get so overwhelmed and caught up with things, and you think it's the end of the world and nothing's ever going to be the same again, and so on and so forth. But you realize, again, as I was pointing out a short while ago, that we're all a tiny speck in the larger scheme of things. And I think this is really my way of being able to detach and disassociate from everything that I live for and live with 24/7. And this is like my 2 hours away from all of that. And it's like digital detox, it's all other kinds of detox. And it's been a great learning. And it's something that I look forward to, because it's a new challenge for me. It's something that I'm sort of, I finish something, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't think that I could do that. And it's just this sort of, it's this feeling that I haven't felt in so long, where at the end of a good show, or at the end of a great story, you would get that kick of, damn, I got that right. And so suddenly I'm feeling that all over again. So it's really it's great motivation. But it's also my way of reinventing myself. And that's been a big part of my journey. I mean, you talked about Future Female Forward, and this is a commitment that I made to myself fairly early on in my career. And I said, every quarter I'm going to try and do something new. I'm going to try and do something different. I'm going to create something as a special it could be a show, it could be a series, it could be a one-off, it could be, but that was very clear to me that every quarter, and it's pretty much worked out that way, that I would invest my time, my energy, and my bandwidth in creating something that was not a part of my everyday 24/7 news cycle. So it was something outside of that. And that for me has been a big learning experience, because that challenge, of creating something, where you have to anticipate change. You've got to think ahead of the curve. You've got to think of what will work, what will resonate. I think that's been a wonderful learning for me over the years. And I think, we've created some pretty special brands along the way. Young Turks is one, Future Female Forward is another, What Women Really Want was another. There's so many shows and so many series that we've created over the years, because it's very, very, very clear to me that, unless you push yourself to want to try, learn, to want to improve, to my whole philosophy, my trip in life is to do better. Is to do better every day in whatever you do. Professional, personal, just to do better is what I'm hoping for, what I'm striving for, and that's really part of my journey.
And that ancient Greeks we would have studied at one point, the life well lived, that's the good goal to have, where you kind of it all lines up. There's so many things I want to pick up. Your yoga is amazing, the challenging yourself. I'm going to limit myself to a couple more questions. At what, when we're super famous, Shereen, we will come back and have this conversation in person when this podcast goes places. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the aging thing, but we're going to come back to that, because I think you're right. There's so much pressure on people, right? So I do want to ask you, now you have pretty much grown up on TV. I think we've seen, if you look at your earlier, again, the Young Turks clips are really cute, because when you look at that collage, you're like, oh my God, you're practically a baby when you started. Is there, what's your message to your younger self? Because you must have seen there's so many ups and downs, right? Obviously, like any career, like anyone, there are crises, there are challenges, you have to keep reinventing yourself, but things also happen. Do you have a message for your younger self, or any of your younger viewers?
Yeah, I think, as I said, for me, really, my biggest learning has been to not let other people's opinion, other people's views, other people's perspective, or what you should or shouldn't do, decide what you do, or make the choices for you. I think it was Nelson Mandela that said, fear should not dictate our choices. And I think that, through our 20s and even through our 30s, a lot of our choices are dictated from a sense of insecurity, fear, competitiveness, and we don't want to show our vulnerabilities. We don't, it's all we want to put out a nice tidy package, right? I mean, because that's what the world wants, right? Everything is neat and clean and well presented. And I think that I would tell my younger self that it's okay to it's you don't have to strive for perfection, and you don't have to worry so much about what the world. You don't need the external validation as much as we think we do. And I think that's really been my biggest realization. I think the internal validation today is so much more significant, is so much more important. And I mean, I finish a show, I know if I've done a good job or not. I don't need somebody on Twitter to tell me. I know immediately. So I think that fine tuning your compass and fine tuning your own radar to pick up those signals, I think is far more effective than anyone outside can do for you.
And it's beautiful because it comes full circle. You started this podcast, you were saying that you don't get your self validation and self worth from external, trappings like accolades and awards. So that's really lovely. Last question for you: what are you reading right now? What are you listening to? And are you plugged into pop culture at all? I can't believe I never asked you that, but I don't know.
One of the casualties of being in this business, unfortunately, because you're just reading so much of work related stuff, that the reading that you want to do has just become inconsistent and patchy. I mean, I'll pick up a book and then I'll read a few pages and I'll put it down. So I think that is my next goal, that I have to restart reading in a structured way. I mean, I want to give time and attention and not have to look at my phone every 3 minutes and then go back to the page that I was reading. So I think that is certainly something that I want to do. I love all kinds of music. In fact, it's interesting that you bring this up, because I think I'm starting to revisit the kind of music that I would listen to when I was in college, or the kind of music that I enjoyed while I was college. I mean, out of the blue, suddenly, like I don't know why I had like Jewel, in my head the other day, and I'm like, I haven't heard that in 20 years, and so I revisited, so it's really been reconnecting with the kind of music that I enjoyed. But I have to say, I mean, I deeply respect and admire Taylor Swift, so I am now a Swiftie. So yes, that is my pop culture
I
sort
love
of.
it. That
Yes.
is like that is on trend. It's on point.
She's fabulous. I think she's
Yeah.
absolutely fabulous for what
Oh
she's
my God. And
doing.
there was some super misogynistic article about her, but we will not take off on a rant. We end with the queen, which is Taylor Swift. But thank you so much, Shereen, for taking the time. I'm going to give you, I guess, about 6 months, because I should have a book coming out. So I'm going to put that on your New Year's list for next year. And I really
I
appreciate you
have a
taking the
book.
time.
I
I have
remember reading the first one.
the first one. Yeah. So this is actually after this one. This is a novel after like 7 years in the making. So hopefully it's worth it. But I do remember, yeah, you're the best. I think just preparing for this interview, I was just thinking of all the ways you have walked the talk, and I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out. I know how busy your schedule is. Thank you for sharing a peek of the other side of Shereen Bhan as well, and thanks for being you.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you so much. And it's always fabulous to spend time with you. And I wish you all the best with the new book. And I will certainly read. That will be my go back to reading. Yeah, that's. I think 6 months is a good enough window for me to be able to like get ready to get back to reading.
I love it. Okay, thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care, Amrita.